What happens when someone reveals a truth they'd kept buried for 45 years, and Dr. Phil stops the cameras in the middle of a live taping? Stop the tape. Stop it right now. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the studio like a blade. The woman in the chair across from him had just said something that made every producer in the control room freeze. In his hand, Dr. Phil held a sealed envelope. And what was inside would shatter everything. But what she revealed in the next 60 seconds would change not just her life, but everyone watching. 30 minutes earlier, the show had started like any other Tuesday taping. The audience filed in, excited, chatting, taking their seats in the familiar Dr. Phil studio. The woman who would soon stop the entire production was named Margaret. At 68 years old, she looked exhausted. Not the kind of tired you get from a bad night's sleep, the kind that comes from carrying a secret so heavy it crushes you slowly over decades. Margaret had written to the show 6 months earlier. Her letter was simple. Dr. Phil, I need to tell the truth before I die. My family deserves to know. But I can't do it alone. The producers had seen thousands of letters. But something about Margaret's, the handwriting shaky but determined, the words measured but desperate, made them call her immediately. What they didn't know was that Margaret had been rehearsing this moment in her mind every single day for 45 years. As Dr. Phil walked onto the stage that morning, his production team briefed him quickly. Woman in her late 60s, family secret, possible paternity issue. Standard territory for the show. Dr. Phil had handled thousands of these cases. He knew the rhythms, the patterns, the way these stories usually unfolded. But the moment Margaret sat down across from him, Dr. Phil's instinct told him this was different. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Her eyes kept darting to the audience, as if checking if someone specific was there. And when Dr. Phil asked his opening question, "Margaret, tell us why you're here today," she opened her mouth and nothing came out. The studio waited. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Dr. Phil leaned forward. "Take your time. There's no rush." Margaret finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Phil, 45 years ago I made a choice. And that choice has haunted me every single day since." She paused, tears already forming. "I gave birth to a baby girl. And I told everyone, my husband, my parents, the doctors, that she died." The audience gasped. Dr. Phil's expression didn't change, but his posture shifted slightly forward. This was no longer a standard taping. "But she didn't die," Margaret continued, her voice breaking. "I gave her up for adoption. And I never told anyone the truth. Not my husband who I've been married to for 44 years. Not my 3 other children. Nobody." The camera operators didn't move. The audience didn't breathe. This was the kind of revelation that stops time. Dr. Phil processed this quickly. A secret adoption disguised as an infant death. A husband who'd mourned a child for over 4 decades, not knowing that child was alive somewhere. Other children who believed they had a deceased sibling they'd never met. "Margaret," Dr. Phil's voice was steady but intense. "Does your husband know you're here today?" "No." Margaret shook her head. "He thinks I'm visiting my sister." "And your other children?" "They don't know either." Dr. Phil stood up. This was unusual. He rarely stood during a taping unless something critical was happening. "Margaret, I need you to understand something. What you're about to do, revealing this truth after 45 years, is going to change your entire family. Are you absolutely certain you're ready?" Margaret nodded. "I'm dying, Dr. Phil. I have stage 4 cancer. 6 months, maybe less. I can't take this secret to my grave." The studio went completely silent. Even the crew members who'd worked on thousands of episodes felt the weight of this moment. Dr. Phil sat back down, but his demeanor had shifted entirely. This was no longer about ratings or entertainment. This was about a woman facing mortality who needed to unburden her soul before it was too late. "Tell me about the day she was born," Dr. Phil said gently. Margaret's hands gripped the armrests of her chair. "I was 23 years old. I'd been married for less than a year. My husband, Tom. Was working 2 jobs trying to save money for our future. I got pregnant right away, and we were so happy. She paused, collecting herself. But when I was 7 months pregnant, I found out Tom had been unfaithful. One night. One mistake. But I was devastated. And the baby? Dr. Phil asked. I gave birth 3 weeks early. A beautiful little girl. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Perfect in every way. Margaret's tears were flowing freely now. But I was so angry, Dr. Phil. So hurt. And in my mind I convinced myself that if I gave her away, it would be my way of punishing him for what he'd done. The audience was visibly emotional. Several women were crying. Dr. Phil maintained his composure, but his jaw was tight. So you told him the baby died? The hospital was in on it, not officially, but there was a social worker who understood my situation. She helped me arrange the adoption quietly. And she helped me stage the death. Fake medical records. A death certificate that was later destroyed. I told Tom our baby died during delivery due to complications. Dr. Phil stood up again. Stop the tape. Everyone, stop recording. The entire crew froze. This almost never happened. The cameras kept rolling, they always do for legal purposes, but the red lights went off. The audience murmured in confusion. Dr. Phil walked to the edge of the stage and spoke directly to his lead producer standing in the wings. We need to make some calls right now. Get the family counseling team on standby. And I need you to verify something for me. He turned back to Margaret. You said you're dying? Do you have documentation? Margaret nodded, pulling papers from her purse. Medical records, oncology reports, prognosis estimates. Dr. Phil didn't look at them. He had his producer take them off stage to verify with the show's medical consultant. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Dr. Phil returned to his seat. The cameras came back on. Margaret, I need to ask you something very difficult. Have you tried to find your daughter? Yes. Margaret's voice was stronger now, as if the act of confessing had given her new energy. I hired a private investigator 3 months ago. I found her. The entire studio erupted in shocked whispers. Dr. Phil raised his hand for silence. Does she know you exist? No. I've been watching her from a distance. She's 45 years old now. She's a teacher. She's married with 2 children of her own. She's beautiful, Dr. Phil. And she has no idea her birth mother is still alive. Dr. Phil reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. The camera zoomed in on it instinctively. Margaret, before you came here today, you sent our producer something. You said this envelope contains a letter you wrote to your daughter. A letter you've never sent. Is that correct? Margaret nodded, unable to speak. And you asked me to help you decide whether or not to send it. Yes. Dr. Phil held the envelope in both hands, looking at it carefully. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. Margaret, I'm going to be very direct with you right now. This letter, he held it up, represents one of 2 paths. If you send this, your daughter will learn that the story she was told about her birth mother is a lie. She'll learn that you're alive, that you gave her up not because you couldn't care for her, but because you were angry at your husband. He paused, letting that sink in. And your husband, Tom, will learn that he's been mourning a child who didn't die. That you lied to him for 45 years. Your other children will learn they have a sister they never knew existed. I know, Margaret whispered. I know all of that. But here's what I need you to understand. Dr. Phil continued, his voice softer now but no less intense. If you don't send this letter, you'll die with this secret. And that might feel like the easier choice right now. But your daughter will never know her medical history. She'll never know where she came from. And Tom will go to his grave believing his firstborn child died in his arms. Margaret was sobbing now. What should I do? Dr. Phil set the envelope down on the small table between them. I can't make that choice for you. But I can tell you this, truth, even painful truth, is almost always better than a lie. Especially a lie this big. The camera slowly pushed in on the envelope sitting on the table. Margaret, Dr. Phil said gently, before we go any further, I need to tell you something. When you agreed to come on this show, you signed releases allowing us to contact people relevant to your story, with your permission. Did you understand that? Margaret looked confused. Yes, but I haven't given permission to contact anyone yet. I know. But I need to ask you now, what if your daughter is already here? The color drained from Margaret's face. What? What if we found her? What if we contacted her and told her that her birth mother wanted to meet her? What if she said yes? Would you be ready for that? Margaret couldn't speak. She looked around the studio wildly, as if her daughter might suddenly appear. Dr. Phil's voice was gentle but firm. She's not here today. But I want you to think about something. You have 6 months, maybe less. That's 6 months to try to build a bridge. Or it's 6 months where the secret dies with you and haunts everyone you leave behind. He picked up the envelope again and held it out to her. This letter is your bridge, Margaret. It's not perfect. It won't erase 45 years. But it's honest. And sometimes honest is all we have. Margaret reached out with shaking hands and took the envelope from him. She held it against her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. Will you help me? She asked Dr. Phil. Will you help me give this to her? Dr. Phil nodded. Yes. But not just the letter. You. In person. If she agrees to meet you, will you face her? Yes. Margaret's voice was clear now, resolved. Yes, I will. Dr. Phil turned to address the audience directly. What Margaret is doing right now takes more courage than most people will ever need in their entire lives. She's choosing truth over comfort. She's choosing honesty over peace. And that's not easy. He turned back to Margaret. Here's what's going to happen. When we finish taping today, our family counseling team is going to work with you. We're going to help you contact your daughter, the right way, with professional support. We're going to help you prepare to tell your husband and your other children. And we're going to be there every step of the way. But I need you to promise me something. Dr. Phil continued, his tone serious. No more lies. Not to them, not to yourself. Whatever happens from this point forward, you face it with truth. Deal? Margaret nodded through her tears. Deal. Dr. Phil stood and helped her to her feet. The audience rose in a standing ovation, not celebrating the lie, but honoring the courage it took to finally tell the truth. As the cameras kept rolling, Dr. Phil did something he rarely does. He walked Margaret off the stage himself, his hand on her shoulder, speaking quietly to her, words the microphones didn't pick up, words meant only for her. The production team held position, unsure if the show was over or not. Dr. Phil returned to the stage alone after a few minutes and addressed the audience directly. Folks, what you just witnessed is what happens when someone decides that dying with the truth is better than living with a lie. Margaret's story isn't over. It's just beginning. And it's going to be painful. Her husband will be devastated. Her children will be angry. Her daughter, if she chooses to meet her, will have every right to reject her. He paused, letting that reality settle over the room. But here's what I know after doing this for over 20 years. Secrets are like poison. They might seem like they're keeping the peace, but really, they're just slowly killing everyone involved. Margaret's secret was killing her. And if she died with it, it would have kept killing her family long after she was gone. Dr. Phil walked to the edge of the stage, looking directly into the camera. If you're watching this and you're carrying a secret that's eating you alive, I want you to hear this. It's never too late to tell the truth. It's never too late to try to make things right. And yes, the truth might hurt. It might even destroy relationships. But lies always hurt worse in the end. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The taping ended. But the story continued off camera. Over the next 3 weeks, Dr. Phil's team worked with Margaret. They hired a professional mediator who specialized in adoption reunifications. They prepared psychological support for everyone involved. And they reached out to Margaret's daughter, whose name was Sarah. Sarah's initial reaction was shock. Then disbelief. Then anger. The woman she'd been told was her birth mother, who had supposedly died, was alive. Had been alive her entire life. Had chosen to give her away. But Sarah agreed to meet her. Not for Margaret's sake, for her own. She needed answers. The meeting happened in a private setting, not on television. Dr. Phil was there, along with professional counselors. When Sarah walked into the room and saw Margaret for the first time, neither woman spoke. They just stared at each other, 45 years of separation condensed into a single moment. Margaret held out the letter, the same sealed envelope from the show. Sarah took it, opened it, and read it in silence. The letter was simple. I'm sorry. I was hurt and angry, and I made a choice I can never undo. You deserve better. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I never forgot you. Sarah looked up from the letter, tears streaming down her face. Why now? Why after 45 years? Because I'm dying, Margaret said quietly. And I couldn't let you spend the rest of your life thinking your birth mother didn't want you. Over the next 4 months, Sarah visited Margaret 7 times. It wasn't healing, exactly. It was more like acknowledging. Acknowledging the truth, the pain, the reality of what had happened. Margaret's husband Tom struggled. But eventually, with counseling, he came back. Not because he forgave easily, but because he didn't want Margaret's final months to be spent alone. 6 months after the taping, Margaret passed away. Sarah was there, holding her hand. At Margaret's funeral, Sarah stood up to speak. She told the assembled mourners about meeting her birth mother for the first time. About the anger and the pain. But also about the gift Margaret had given her in those final months, the truth. She made terrible choices, Sarah said, her voice steady. And those choices hurt people. But in the end, she chose courage over comfort. And that matters. That envelope, the letter Margaret had written, Sarah kept it. A reminder that truth, even when it comes late, still matters. Years later, Dr. Phil would reflect on that episode as one of the most powerful moments in the show's history. Not because it was dramatic, though it was. But because it demonstrated something fundamental. We're all capable of terrible choices, but we're also capable of redemption if we're brave enough to face the truth. The lesson endures, secrets destroy. But truth, no matter how painful, gives us a chance to heal.